everyone. Hey, congratulations on your new film, Zero.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gig. Thank you.
You know, this film is such an adrenaline rush, and this is the type of film we love to watch on a Friday and Saturday night. So let me throw the first question to both Jean and Hus about this film is where the original idea came from for Zero.
It's what happened when you take a lot of drugs, Gig. It's most honestly, I see the producer is laughing already. So no, real story. So it all started with Cameron right there. We're friends and we shot some short movies together. And then he came to me after my second film and basically said, "Hey man, I'm working with this guy. We want to make a film. We have the budget. Do you have an idea?" And then I worked with those guys and I came with this idea of what about two guys waking up in Dakar with bomb straps on their chest and a 10-hour kilometer. And Hus was doing exactly what you're doing, which is, mm-hmm. And then I said, well, emotion heart is if you have 5 seconds to tell to the daughter that you never saw.
And Frozen.
You want to take over?
Yeah. I mean, what he was getting at was like really, we had this idea for this action movie, which is really, two guys with bombs strapped to their chest, 10 hours to find out why. And then really after that, it was just finding the emotional core of the movie, which Jean Luc was saying, which is like if you had 5 seconds to tell somebody that you loved or that you had never met before, that what would you say to them before everything is over? So it was really just finding that emotional core, and then also finding the emotional core for both characters, really like where what was Cameron's story, what was his emotional core, what was my emotional core, and then how did those two characters sort of find redemption with their lives, ultimately, like the before your life is over, how do you come up with some sort of redemption? So that was a big thing for us in terms of finding that emotional core with an action thriller.
Mm.
Most excellent. And I don't want to mispronounce your name. Is it Hus or Hughes?
Who's
Who's?
Yep.
Who? So tell us how you boarded this project. What initially drew you in? Because you have producer credit on this project too. So you firmly believe in this.
Yeah, I mean, this was really so Cameron and I have been friends for 30 years almost, Cam, something like that.
So yeah,
I want to age
yeah,
us,
probably.
but something like that. We've known each other for a long time. We knew each other when we both lived in Los Angeles, and both of us have a strong love for film, especially 70s film, and we've always been sort of wanting to make a few things together. We've always been wanting to make a feature together. Cam and I have worked together several times. We shot a short film, a few years ago, and that was really fun. And sort of we acted sort of like as a, producer, writer, director with, Cam sort of writer, director on that one. So we've known each other for a long time, and really, Cam and I were looking for a project to do together. And Cam sort of presented, Cam had worked with Jean Luc before. He had talked, sort of presented Jean Luc to me in terms of like a director that we might be interested in working with. And so once we started talking to Jean Luc, Cam and I took a trip to Senegal to meet with Jean Luc, and we just instantly knew that the three of us, should do something together. And then sort of from there, a bunch of ideas came about. And once we hit on the idea for Zero, it was really like, okay, there's something really, really strong here. Sounds fun. And then things took off from there. Jean-Luc and I really took over sort of a lot of the, really writing the script, but obviously Cam was involved the whole time in terms of the three of us really collaborating over a 9 months to a year long period of really coming up with the story. And then from there, I mean, yes, I did, I produced the movie as well. And that was really how things came together. It was really sort of Cameron and I knowing for each other for a long time, meeting Jean-Luc, and then the three of us really collaborating together for several years making this movie.
Cam, you have anything to add to that? Because it seems like you were right there at the beginning.
Yeah, like what was Hoos was saying, it's initially initially when we wanted to make something over there where we're kind of toying with the idea of like when we made the short with me directing something until we went over there. We visited the first time and met with Jean Luc. Jean Luc was going to help. Weren't sure if he was if he was going to direct it or produce it. Maybe. I knew he did some sort of a television show with Canal Plus, how you pronounce it, over there. That was popular in France, and so he was kind of establishing himself there. Then we got there, and having seen Saloon and other stuff that Jean Luc has made shorts, previous to that. I realized, well, first of all, I felt like I had no business telling a story there because I just didn't know. I was an alien there, and there was so much to say. And Jean-Luc, we just thought, let's let Jean-Luc go crazy and go gonzo with this thing and just let him do something. Just hand it over to him, which was the best decision ever.
Thank you,
There's
Cam.
nobody else that could have done it. And we were kind of early on thinking like, I wonder if like, because he's establishing himself there. I wonder if, this could be like sort of like a Rome or an Italy in the 60s situation with all the spaghetti westerns happening in West Africa. And I think he kind of kicked that off. I think it could actually be happening now because of Jean-Luc. So, that was the initial thing. That's how it initially started. But then Jean-Luc came up with a story for Zero, and then he and Hus got together and actually wrote it, and the avalanche was rolling from there. Jean-Luc, you're back.
Most excellent.
Yeah, I'm
Jean,
here. Sorry, guys, I had some problem with connection, but I'm here. Yeah. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you so much. Yeah, sorry for that
Jean-Luc,
gig.
can you
Yeah.
tell us? No, it's all right. They filled in about the story, but tell us about this style of directing that you actually have because it's very gritty style of directing with the action and explosions and everything else. Very David Ayers kind of style of directing.
Mhm. I'm not gonna be the best client to answer this question, and I'm gonna tell you why, because I always felt like when a director knows what his style is dead. So to be honest with you, I don't really put conscience into it. Does it make sense what I'm saying that? It's not a conscious choice, but what I can tell you is there was those two characters plus the voice. There were like three voices in the movie, and I needed them to be quite clear and understandable for the audience because the game here is, as I love it also is, and as you love it, and as Cameron loves it, is we like movies when exposition is delayed or not there. For me, that's the best kind of movies when you can just discover every minutes after minutes after minutes. So the game was more about how I can make you understand those characters very quickly with the action instead of explaining who they are and why they're there, right? So then the mise en scène was following that. Basically, when you're with Cameron, he's the samurai for me. He's the military samurai. So it's very neat. It's very steady, and it's about violence. And when you are with youth, it's about being lost in a place that you don't know. It's not your environment. You're a money guy, and you can't use violence. Well, so what do you do? Right. So then the camera is more handheld and more hectic. So there was some codes in the movie, and when they get together, we have this weird mix between it's moving a lot, but it's very steady. So it's the steady cam work, right? So there was a lot of mini codes in the movie for the audience to be, yeah, and I think it's also part of the effect that you're talking about when you're talking about Riven, to be thrown in the action and understand what's happening with the action instead of just talking about it. So the process will be probably more close to a Mad Max movie, where you don't talk that much and you explain everything with what's going on instead of just talking and explaining what's going to happen, if it makes sense. Yeah.
It certainly does. Hughes,
Yes.
Cam, tell us about getting into your characters for as number one and number two in this film. Obviously, there is a lot of action and thrills, and intense moments from scene to scene.
Yeah, well, Jean Luc. I've often said, and whatever, I just have this opinion. I think a lot of directors they tend to usually either be in the highly visual camp or more kind of the highly sort of actor friendly camp. And Jean Luc's one of those guys that kind of is in both. Thankfully, he actually he spent a lot of time with Hus and I for a long time. I mean, the process before we actually shot was, I mean, it had to be at least a year, wasn't it? Something like that, or at least close to it.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, it
so
was.
during that entire time, he was working with us like really closely with our characters and our whole backstories and like the whole look that I have is 100% Jean-Luc, except for the mohawk. That's the one thing because it was during the lockdown and I grew a mohawk and he's like, keep it, keep it.
The Mohawk was great, man. Good idea.
But but that whole look, the red jacket, the everything, even the bleached hair, the beard, that was all him. And he would, send Hus and I photos and things that he wanted us to do. And it was super exciting for me to have that time and to have someone that much time to actually, kind of let things percolate and to prepare, put on some weight, grow a big beard. Um, it's not something that Jean-Luc skimps on in the preparation of it and the emotional aspect of each thing. And whether you actually even see it or not, it's on screen. I think something kind of comes through as far as backstory and that sort of thing goes, and it was pretty elaborate. So best creative experience really ever, and it was a long preparation and really fun.
It certainly is because Cam, you are unrecognizable from film to talking to you right now. That is quite a transformation. Hughes, can you add on about being in the primary role as a number one and how you fit into that character?
Yeah, definitely. Like Cam said, I mean, we did so much prep beforehand, and so much of that was Jean Luc really, giving us a lot, whether it was visuals or movies to watch or just examples of things that he wanted. And there was all the like the year-long prep of getting ready for that. And then there was the next phase, which was actually starting filming, and that really took over a lot, I think, for both Cam and I in terms of really, probably maybe 3 days into filming, really just going, okay, this is what we're making. This is our environment. This is how we, the real feeling of like, it didn't take much for us to feel get into character with these bombs strapped to our chest. I mean, literally like iron, these iron straps just, locked on our chest. And so just that feeling of like constriction and heat and dirty and sweaty and all of that, it didn't take much to really dive into and start to feel it, And so it was a great process, a lot of help from Jean-Luc and a lot of help from just being there and really, really getting into character from that standpoint.
Isn't the bomb vest there is a hindrance to your acting or stunts or even like choreographed fighting?
Can I answer that real quick
Yeah,
first?
yeah, go
Like,
for it.
the answer is yes. But we actually had for some of the more kind of extensive fighting, we had sort of these sort of stunt double vests that were actually made of leather instead of metal. So it was a lot more mobile. Um, but when we have our big coats on, our red one or our big fur coat or whatever, we have these giant metal, things. And like Hus was running around in slippery like dress shoes and a coat all over Dakar all day in that thing, and that had to be rough. And yeah, I mean it is hard, and you can kind of see it when we're wearing. You obviously have to move a little differently, but like Hus was saying, I mean, when you strap that stuff on,
It stays.
it's like being a kid when you put some kind of a costume on or something. It's like it does something to you. It changes how you move, but that also changes how you feel and how you behave. And and being and it was severely uncomfortable. I mean, it's already super hot and we're wearing all the clothes on top of it, and it would dig into your skin and pinch you. But this is all good. Look at Jean-Luc smiling. He loved it because he loved it torturous. But it all helps you feel you know, out of place and out of sorts and uncomfortable. And this is what we were. This is who we were, and who these guys were in this movie. So it was a lot. It was very helpful in that way.
Yeah, and I think there were days for me, and you and I talked about this, Jean-Luc, during filming, where there were days for me where I didn't necessarily need to have the
Yeah.
iron cage on, but I chose to have it on because of how uncomfortable it was. And
Yeah.
that
Oh,
for me just like helped, having it strapped in. And some days I would ask for it to be a little tighter so that it just I wanted to feel that, and as uncomfortable as it was. I mean, it literally cutting into your skin
yeah.
at certain times, but I kind of needed that, so I tortured myself a few days.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
we couldn't
so
fake
Hughes, you're
it.
saying that
Oops, sorry guys.
Hughes, you're saying that torturing yourself helped with your acting in this case?
I don't know if it helped, but it helped me. Yeah.
It was very
It
uncomfortable.
helped me get into the frame of mind. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Jean-Luc, tell us about filming in your backyard, Senegal, here.
Um, well, the way I sold it to Hus as a producer and Cameron also as an actor was we there's so much that we can do here in Senegal that you can't do in US and France anymore because you have unions, because you have this and that. And so there's that idea of we were riding in a new kind of gold rush in terms of cinema. And what I sold to them was, for example, a shooting permit in France would be about a street. A shooting permit in Senegal is about the region. So you can see the difference, right? So we had our sandbox, our playground was huge and bigger, but in the same time, Dakar is the kind of city that is very, very busy. So to go from a place to another, it takes you like forever, So we had to be very, very smart about where we were shooting. But then there's also that energy of it's full of young people in Dakar. It's a young industry. It's an old industry because we're not the first one shooting in Dakar, and there's of course a Senegalese cinema, but this kind of movie hasn't been done that much. If it's not the first one, to be honest with you, there's a TV series called 000, which is an action one, nothing to do with us, but it was happening in Senegal. There must be something with the zero stuff in Senegal. I don't know. And this one was basically, as I know, the first American action movie shot in Dakar. So I'm all about the first, and I love to put my collaborators and the people that follow me into a situation that is also new for them because it's a challenge. And when everybody is challenged, usually you would have the best of everybody. If you work with the right person. And in this. In this adventure, I had the best collaborators ever, which is these two guys. So we just had fun, man, and we played with whatever we could in Senegal. And people, the way they look at those two characters in the movie was exactly the way they were looking at us when we were shooting that. It was like, who are these bunch of gonzo, weird guys, crazy guys? What the fuck are they doing with bomb straps on their chest? By the way, and funny enough, people were not caring that much about your bombs anyway. They were like other crazy people doing stuff in the
Yeah.
car, right? So yeah, that was an adventure, and that's also a call for, because we're always searching for new places to shoot in this industry. That's also a call for other collaborators in this industry, like come shoot in Africa and come look at something different, because you can have something different there, and guess what? Less expensive.
So true, so true. Well, it's a very exciting film, action, pace, and adrenaline rush, and not to mention, you guys managed to score Willem Dafoe as
Yeah,
the voice,
the God
and
in the sky.
that is such a great score for you guys because his voice was really terrifying on that other end for certain. So, anyways, thank you very much for carrying this conversation with us. Everyone needs to check it
Thank you,
out,
Guy.
especially to watch this if they love action.